December 7th, 1941, 7:55 a.m. A quiet Sunday morning in paradise, and then the sky turned black with Japanese planes, bombs falling, ships exploding, 2,400 Americans gone. In just 2 hours, America entered World War II. But how did this tiny island paradise become the target that changed the world? To understand, we need to go back. Way back, 1,500 years, to a time when these islands had no people at all, just volcanoes, waves, and endless ocean. Until one day, someone arrived. This is the entire history of Hawaii. Around 400 AD, somewhere in the South Pacific, a group of Polynesians made a crazy decision. They would sail north, into the unknown, looking for new land, no maps, no compass, no GPS, just the stars, the waves, and the birds. These were the greatest sailors the world had ever seen. For weeks they sailed, through storms, through hunger, through doubt, 2,000 miles from home, completely alone. And then, a bird, flying north. Birds mean land. Follow the bird. And there it was, rising from the ocean like a dream, green mountains touching the clouds. Hawaii. They called it their new home. They built villages, grew taro and sweet potato, fished the crystal waters. They created a rich culture, hula, surfing, the spirit of aloha. For over 1,000 years, Hawaii belonged only to Hawaiians, but that was about to change. 1778, Captain James Cook had arrived. The Hawaiians had never seen anything like it. Giant ships, white skin, strange weapons that made thunder. Some thought Cook was a god. Lono returned from the sea. They gave him gifts, food, respect, everything he wanted. But Cook made a mistake. He came back. Gods don't come back. Gods don't need repairs. The Hawaiians realized he was just a man. Tensions rose. A fight broke out on the beach, and Captain Cook, the great explorer, was killed. But the British left something behind. Guns. And one young warrior was paying attention. His name was Kamehameha, and he had a dream, to unite all the islands under one king, him. He traded with foreigners, got more guns, more cannons, built an army like Hawaii had never seen. Island by island, he conquered. Battle after battle, he won. The Battle of Nuuanu. His enemies were pushed off a cliff. 800 warriors, falling. By 1810, it was done. One kingdom, one king. Kamehameha the Great, the Napoleon of the Pacific. Hawaii was now a real nation, but new visitors were already on their way, with a very different kind of weapon. 1820, the first American missionaries stepped onto Hawaiian soil. They came to save souls. Your gods are false, they said. Your hula is sinful. Your way of life is wrong. Hula was banned. Traditional religion forbidden. The old Hawaii began to disappear. But the missionaries did bring something useful. They created a written Hawaiian language and built schools. Hawaii became one of the most literate nations on earth, higher than America itself. Then the businessmen arrived. They saw something even more valuable than souls. Land, sugar, white gold. It grew perfectly in Hawaiian soil, and Americans wanted all of it. But sugar needs workers. Lots of workers. The Hawaiians couldn't do it alone, so they brought workers from China, from Japan, from the Philippines, from Portugal. Hawaii was becoming something new, a mix of cultures unlike anywhere else on earth. But there was a problem. The native Hawaiians were dying. Diseases from foreigners, measles, smallpox, flu. Their bodies had no defense. In 1778, there were 300,000 Hawaiians. By 1850, only 70,000 remained. The Hawaiian kingdom was weakening, and the Americans were getting stronger. 1891, a new ruler took the throne. Queen Liliuokalani, Hawaii's first queen, and its last. She was brilliant, a composer, a writer, a leader who loved her people. But she inherited a kingdom in trouble. American businessmen owned most of the land, and they wanted more power. The queen had a plan, a new constitution to give power back to Hawaiians. The Americans were furious. If Hawaiians got power, they would lose their sugar profits. They called themselves the Committee of Safety, but there was nothing safe about their plan. They had powerful friends. The United States military, January 17, 1893. 160 American Marines marched into Honolulu. They surrounded the palace. Cannons pointed at the Queen's home. The Queen faced an impossible choice: fight and watch her people die, or surrender and save them. She chose her people. The Queen surrendered, but she made them a promise. I yield my authority, only until the United States undoes this injustice. That justice never came. The businessmen formed a new government, the Republic of Hawaii. But everyone knew who really controlled it. The Queen didn't give up. She tried to get her throne back, but she was arrested, locked in her own palace, forced to officially give up her throne. Her kingdom was gone forever. 1898. The United States officially annexed Hawaii. 21,000 Hawaiians signed a petition against it. They were ignored. Hawaii was now American territory. The paradise had been stolen, and it would never be returned. But America wasn't just interested in sugar anymore. They saw something even more valuable: a military base. Hawaii was now American, but for most Hawaiians, nothing really changed. The sugar companies still ruled, the workers still worked, the profits still flowed to the mainland. The Big Five. 5 American companies that controlled everything: sugar, shipping, banking, land. If you lived in Hawaii, you worked for them, or you didn't work at all. More workers arrived from Japan, Korea, and the Philippines. They came looking for opportunity. What they found was backbreaking labor in company towns where they couldn't escape. But something unexpected happened. These workers from different countries, they started to become something new. Not Japanese, not Filipino, not Portuguese, Hawaiian. They created Pidgin English, a new language mixing all their words together. They shared their foods, their traditions, their families. Hawaii was becoming the melting pot America always claimed to be. Meanwhile, the American military had big plans. They looked at Pearl Harbor and saw the perfect natural fortress. Deep water, protected harbor, right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They started building docks that could hold the biggest battleships, fuel tanks that held millions of gallons of oil, barracks for thousands of sailors. Pearl Harbor was becoming the most important military base in the Pacific. By 1940, the Pacific Fleet had arrived. Battleship Row. 8 massive warships lined up like sleeping giants. America felt invincible. Nothing could touch them here. Across the Pacific, someone was watching very carefully. Japan had been building an empire. Korea, Manchuria, China. They were hungry for more, and America stood in their way. America tried to stop them with money. They cut off oil exports to Japan, froze Japanese bank accounts. The message was clear: stop expanding or we'll strangle your economy. Japan had a choice: give up their empire or fight. They chose to fight, and they knew exactly where to strike first: the sleeping giant at Pearl Harbor. November 1941, a Japanese fleet secretly sailed east across the Pacific. 6 aircraft carriers, 400 planes. Destination, Hawaii. The world was about to change forever. In Hawaii, nobody suspected a thing. It was just another peaceful December. Soldiers played football, sailors went dancing, families planned Christmas. They had no idea what was coming over the horizon. December 6, 1941. Saturday night in paradise. The last peaceful night Hawaii would ever know. Sunday morning, December 7th, 6 a.m. 230 miles north of Hawaii, Japanese pilots gathered on their aircraft carriers. They prayed. They wrote final letters to their families. They knew many of them would not return. 6:15 a.m. The first wave launched. 183 planes roared off the carrier decks and turned south toward Pearl Harbor. The attack had begun, and nobody in Hawaii had any idea. At Pearl Harbor, it was a lazy Sunday morning. Most sailors were still sleeping. Some were eating breakfast. Church services were about to begin. The base was completely relaxed, completely unprepared. 7:02 a.m. 2 Army privates were operating a radar station on the North Shore. New technology. They saw something strange on their screen, a huge cluster of blips. Incoming aircraft, hundreds of them. They called it in, but the officer on duty made a fatal mistake. He assumed it was American B-17 bombers arriving from California. "Don't worry about it," he said. "It's nothing." Those words would haunt him forever. 7:40 a.m. The Japanese planes crossed the Hawaiian coastline. The pilots looked down and saw paradise. Green mountains, blue water, and Battleship Row. All 8 ships, sitting ducks. 7:48 a.m. The lead pilot sent the signal. Tora, Tora, Tora. Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. Complete surprise achieved. 7:49 a.m. The first bombs fell, and hell came to paradise. Boom! The USS Arizona was hit. A bomb went straight through the deck and into the ammunition storage. One massive explosion. 1,177 men. Gone in seconds. Everywhere, chaos. Planes strafing the airfields. Torpedoes slamming into battleships. Sailors jumping into burning water. Men running for guns that were locked away. It was a massacre. But Americans started fighting back. Even in the chaos, heroes emerged. Mess cook Doris Miller grabbed an anti-aircraft gun. He'd never been trained to use it. He didn't care. He shot down at least 2 Japanese planes. 2 pilots, George Welch and Kenneth Taylor, raced to a small airfield. Their planes were still there, still armed. They took off right into the attacking Japanese formation. 2 Americans against hundreds. They shot down 7 enemy planes between them. 8:54 a.m. A second wave arrived. 170 more planes. For another hour, the bombing continued. Ship after ship after ship. Hit, burning, sinking. The USS Oklahoma was hit by 9 torpedoes. She rolled completely over. 429 men were trapped inside the upside-down hull, pounding on the metal, crying for help. As water slowly rose around them, rescue teams heard the tapping from inside the Oklahoma for days. They cut through the hull and saved 32 men, but they couldn't reach everyone. Some survivors reported hearing tapping that continued for over 2 weeks. And then, silence. By 10 a.m., it was over. The Japanese planes flew back to their carriers. Behind them, they left destruction beyond imagination. Pearl Harbor was burning. The numbers were devastating. 2,403 Americans dead. 1,178 wounded. 21 ships sunk or damaged. 300 aircraft destroyed in just 2 hours. 2 hours that changed the world forever. The next day, President Franklin Roosevelt addressed Congress. Yesterday, he said, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States declared war on Japan. America was in World War II. Admiral Yamamoto, who planned the attack, knew the truth. "I fear all we have done," he said, "is awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." He was right. The sleeping giant was awake, and he was angry. Across America, men lined up to enlist. Factories switched to making tanks and planes. Women went to work. The entire nation united with one purpose: win the war, avenge Pearl Harbor. At Pearl Harbor, they didn't wait. Even while the fires still burned, they started rebuilding. Ships that Japan thought were destroyed were raised from the harbor floor, repaired, returned to battle. They would have their revenge. December 7th, 1941, the day that changed everything, for America, for Japan, for the world, and especially for Hawaii. After Pearl Harbor, Hawaii became a military fortress. Martial law was declared. The Army took control of everything: curfews, censorship, barbed wire on the beaches. Paradise had become a war zone, but the worst was yet to come. For Japanese Americans, suspicion turned to persecution. On the mainland, over 120,000 people of Japanese descent were forced from their homes, sent to internment camps, prisoners in their own country. In Hawaii, it was different. Japanese Americans made up over 1/3 of the population. You couldn't lock up 1/3 of Hawaii. The economy would collapse, so most stayed free. But they were watched, always watched. Japanese Americans wanted to prove their loyalty. Young men volunteered for the Army in huge numbers. They weren't asking for special treatment. They were asking for the chance to fight. to prove they were American. They formed the 482nd Regimental Combat Team, all Japanese American. Their motto was, "Go for broke," and they meant it. They became the most decorated unit in American military history. These men, whose families were in prison camps, fought and died for the country that imprisoned them. Meanwhile, Hawaii became the command center for the entire Pacific War. Every battle, every invasion, every strategy planned right here. Millions of troops passed through on their way to fight Japan. June 1942, the Battle of Midway, just 1,000 miles from Hawaii. American codebreakers knew the Japanese were coming. This time, there would be no surprise. The hunters became the hunted. 4 Japanese carriers sunk, the same carriers that attacked Pearl Harbor. The tide of war had turned. Japan would never recover. Island by island, America fought its way across the Pacific, toward Japan itself. August 6, 1945. The atomic bomb fell on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Nagasaki. The most destructive weapons ever created. Hundreds of thousands dead in seconds. Japan surrendered. September 2nd, 1945. The war was over. In Hawaii, people poured into the streets, crying, cheering, hugging strangers. 4 years of fear and sacrifice. Finally over. They had survived. But for Japanese Americans returning from the internment camps, there was no celebration. Many came home to find their businesses gone, their homes sold, their lives destroyed. They had lost everything, not to the enemy, to their own country. The war changed Hawaii forever. The military was here to stay. The old plantation economy was dying. And a new generation, of all backgrounds, had fought and bled together. They would never accept being second-class citizens again. Hawaii had paid in blood for a country that didn't even consider it a real state. That was about to change. After the war, Hawaii wanted one thing: statehood, to be a real part of America, not a territory, a state. But Congress said no, year after year. The real reason? Racism. Hawaii was too diverse, too many Asians, too many non-whites. Hawaii kept fighting. Veterans of the 402nd became politicians. They had medals to prove their loyalty, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. March 1959. The bill finally passed. August 21st, it was official. Hawaii became the 50th state. In Hawaii, celebrations erupted. Church bells rang for hours. Strangers danced in the streets. After 60 years as a territory, they were finally equal. Statehood changed everything. Suddenly, Hawaii was connected to the mainland. Airlines started flying tourists across the Pacific. Thousands at first, then millions. Waikiki transformed. Hotels rose from the sand. Beaches filled with sunburned mainlanders. Hawaii became America's tropical playground. 1961. Elvis Presley came to Hawaii. He played a benefit concert for the USS Arizona Memorial, and he made Hawaii look like heaven on earth. Blue Hawaii, the movie that sold paradise to the world. Suddenly, everyone wanted a lei, a luau, and a view of Diamond Head. The sugar plantations closed one by one. Tourism was the new king. Hotels paid better than fields. Hawaii's economy transformed completely. Surfing exploded. What was once an ancient Hawaiian tradition became a global phenomenon. California kids worshiped the waves. Hawaii was cool, but not everyone was celebrating. Native Hawaiians watched their home being sold piece by piece. Sacred land turned into golf courses. Ancient sites bulldozed for condos. Hawaiian culture became a costume. Plastic leis, fake luau's, hula for tourists. The real Hawaii was being buried under the fantasy version. Hawaii was finally American. But many wondered, at what cost? The question would only grow louder in the decades to come. The 1970s, Native Hawaiians had had enough. Their language was dying. Their land was gone. Their culture was a joke for tourists. It was time to fight back. The Hawaiian Renaissance began. Young Hawaiians learned the old language, the old dances, the old ways of navigating by stars. They refused to let their culture die. 1976. The Hokulea sailed, a traditional voyaging canoe. No compass, no GPS, just the stars. From Hawaii to Tahiti, proving the ancestors' navigation was real. Some Hawaiians wanted more than a cultural revival. They wanted their country back. The sovereignty movement was born. Hawaii was stolen, they said, and it should be returned. 1993, 100 years after the overthrow. President Clinton signed an official apology. The United States admitted it. The taking of Hawaii was wrong. But an apology without action meant little. No land was returned. No sovereignty granted. Just words. The debate continues to this day. Meanwhile, tourism kept growing. 10 million visitors a year. Some islands had more tourists than residents. Hawaii was being loved to death. Housing prices exploded. Mainland millionaires bought vacation homes. Local families couldn't afford to stay. Many moved away, priced out of their own paradise. 2008, a moment of pride. Barack Obama, born in Honolulu, became the 44th president, the first Hawaiian, the first black president, Hawaii's son in the White House. Climate change brought new threats: rising seas, dying coral reefs, stronger hurricanes. The paradise that survived Pearl Harbor now faced a slower enemy. 2020, the pandemic hit. Tourism stopped overnight. For the first time in decades, Hawaii was quiet. Locals saw dolphins return to empty bays and asked, "Is this what we lost?" Hawaii stood at a crossroads. The old ways or the new ways? Tourism or sustainability? American state or Hawaiian nation? The answers weren't clear, but the questions couldn't be ignored. August 8th, 2023. The island of Maui woke up to a nightmare. Wildfires driven by hurricane winds, moving faster than anyone could run. The historic town of Lahaina was directly in the path. Within hours, Lahaina was gone. The oldest town in Hawaii, former capital of the Hawaiian kingdom, burned to ash. 102 people died. Thousands lost everything. The world watched in horror. Help poured in. But for native Hawaiians, this was more than a fire. This was sacred land. This was their history. And now developers were circling, offering to buy the ashes of their ancestors' home. The people of Maui said no, not this time. They would rebuild, but on their terms. For locals, not for tourists. For families, not for investors. Lahaina would rise again, Hawaiian style. Today, Hawaii faces all the questions it's always faced. Who owns paradise? Who gets to live there? Who decides what it becomes? There are no easy answers. But Hawaiians are done letting others answer for them. And the spirit of aloha, that word tourists see on t-shirts and keychains, it's real. It means love, compassion, breath of life shared between people. It survived everything, and it still lives. So that's Hawaii, born from volcanoes, found by the greatest sailors who ever lived, united by a warrior king, stolen by businessmen, attacked by an empire, transformed by war and tourism, and still fighting to be itself. From those first Polynesian voyagers looking at the stars, to the survivors of Pearl Harbor fighting back, to the native Hawaiians demanding their culture survive, Hawaii's story is a story of people who refuse to give up. 1,500 years of history, explorers and kings, tragedy and triumph, war and peace, and through it all, those beautiful islands in the middle of the Pacific, still standing, still breathing, still alive. If you ever visit Hawaii, look beyond the hotels, beyond the luau's and the souvenir shops. Listen to the language, learn the history, respect the land, because Hawaii isn't just a vacation destination, it's a nation, with a story that deserves to be heard. And remember Pearl Harbor, not just as an attack, but as a reminder that peace is fragile, that freedom costs lives, and that ordinary people can become heroes when it matters most. I'm Gio, and this has been the entire history of Hawaii, from paradise to Pearl Harbor and everything in between. Mahalo for watching, and aloha.